All right, Notre Dame, they knock it down. The two-time champion Georgia Bulldogs in the last 3 years, and they did it by using Georgia's recipe against them. Hello and welcome to Always College Football. I'm your host, Greg McElroy. It is officially Thursday, January 2nd from when I'm taping this right now, around 7 o'clock local time here in New Orleans, Louisiana. If you look over my right shoulder, confetti still raining down from the rafters here in the Superdome, where Notre Dame just punched their ticket to the Orange Bowl in Miami, where they'll face the Penn State Nittany Lions just a week from tonight. Should be incredible. We can't wait to get into it. We will here in just a moment. But like we always do here at Always College Football, we ask you to like, to rate, and to subscribe to the show. I just got off the call, so I'm here for y'all so we can break these games down. We did so, however, with the first three ball games just a little while ago, so we will break those down. We'll start there with the outstanding Fiesta Bowl between Penn State and Boise State just a few nights ago. We will start with the game that took place, the final game of the 2024 year. That was out in Fiesta Bowl. That was between Penn State and Boise State. It was an awesome game, by the way. One that I thoroughly enjoyed. And I know that, look, those that will come and look at the final score, those that will come and maybe look at the box score, whatever the circumstances may be, if you didn't watch it, you probably sat there and thought to yourself, yeah, it just didn't feel very good, all this other stuff. But then, I think when you watched it, it felt more competitive than it was, especially in the second half of that football game at times. I think a lot of people will probably chalk it up to a few different things. One, Penn State's an excellent football team. That should be the initial takeaway, always. Two, more on this here in just a minute. The bye week was probably a little disadvantageous for the Boise State Broncos because of their sloppy play. Very uncharacteristic performance from Boise. We've been watching Boise for 2 decades, playing at the highest levels of football, and we have never seen them make the self-inflicteds like that in a high-level bowl game or a postseason atmosphere against top-tier competition. It just doesn't happen. So that was very out of character, but there were a lot of takeaways from this one. One, Penn State's rushing attack. Here, since they've lost to Ohio State, think about how different this rushing attack has been. Think about the commitment that Andy Kotelnicki, the offensive coordinator, has made to this rushing attack. It's been incredible. I mean, absolutely incredible. Since they lost to Ohio State, they have outrushed their opponents. Remember, this is a 7-game season since they lost to Ohio State. They have outrushed their opponents by 847 yards. That is insane when you really think about that. 7 games, 7 different opponents. They have outrushed them by nearly 120 some odd yards a game, 121 yards a game, thereabouts. The average, just so you know, is 219 yards a game since that point. Their opponents on average are rushing for just 98 yards. So that's been a massive change from what Penn State has been, and the commitment has been tremendous. And I think as a result, that balance that they're able to create between Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen, who combined for 221 in this game, it's the most rushing yards that Boise's allowed 2 running backs in the game this season. Allen goes for $134. He was the first player all season to outrush Ashton Genty in a game against Boise State. So really impressive. But once you get the run game going, now you open up the play action pass. And if you look at Drew Aller, I thought Drew Aller did a really good job. There were times when the blitz was just barreling down on him. He would find a way to get out of it. He would negotiate. There were times he took some hits. But there were times, too, where the protection got overloaded, and he still was able to kind of maneuver his way around it and find some guys open downfield. But there were also times when he was in rhythm and was able to drop it in a perfect spot in the back of the end zone for one of his wide receivers that was streaking free, and more often than not in single coverage, because of the effect that the run game has on the second and third level defenders. Tyler Warren has another big game, 6 for 63 and a couple touchdowns, and it was tremendously impressive on the defensive side throughout the entire game. The tackling, and we talked about this being a huge key for Penn State. This was a massive key from start to finish, they had to tackle. If you look at how Ashton Genty breaks tackles, you look at how he can make defenders look silly, his contact balance, and how he always seemingly stays upright, even though he gets hit really hard there by a linebacker or a defensive lineman. Well, he had just 47 yards after contact. That was a season low. He averaged over 127 yards after contact per game throughout the regular season. To have just 47 in a game like that is absurd. There's a guy that made 111 missed tackles all season long coming into this game. There were very few from start to finish from Penn State. And to know that they did it in large part without Abdul Carter, the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, and he was sidelined in the second quarter and didn't return, it says an awful lot about how good collectively this game played. Tremendous performance from Boise State, or from Penn State against Boise State, and limiting and bottling up what is a terrific offensive rushing attack. As far as Boise, I do think the bye had a huge effect on them. They looked completely out of sorts. If you want to go through the self-inflicted mistakes, all right, 4 turnovers, most in the game this season. The 3 interceptions, the most that Maddox Madsen's had all season. 13 penalties. That's their most in the game since 2004. Yes, you heard that right. In 2004, that was the last time they had 13 plus penalties. They missed a couple field goals. One was a complete duck hook on the opening possession of the game. It was just one thing after another. One thing after another. I don't think it proved that Boise can't play with the big boys. I don't think it proved that. It just proves that the bye actually has a huge effect on how buttoned up your team might be. When you have a long layoff and the other team played an elimination game 11 days ago, guess what? That team that had it on the line a couple weeks back, they're going to be a little bit more buttoned up and a little more dialed in when they're going against teams that have not played in the better part of 3.5 weeks. More on that here in just a little bit. We'll move on to Texas and Arizona State. What a thriller this game was. Double overtime classic. Texas survives 39-31. It was just the second game to go to multiple overtimes in the college football playoffs history. The other one was in the Rose Bowl. That was between Baker Mayfield-led Oklahoma team and a Georgia team that went on to challenge in the national championship. That was back in 2017. There have been 4 other games that have gone to overtime in the college football playoff, but just one prior to this game today that had gone to multiple overtimes. The Longhorns were up by 16 in the fourth quarter, feeling like things were in good shape, feeling like it had a chance actually early in the game to feel kind of like a rout, didn't it? Felt like it was kind of going to go in a different direction, but they're not going to be able to stop Texas. Texas has got way too much firepower. They're winning in all 3 phases. The defense is completely holding Cam Skattebo in check. They're rushing the passer. They can't block them. Guys can't separate in the back end. And then they also are making plays in special teams. They nearly had a punt blocked, and they returned a punt to the house, and they blocked a field goal. So what else could go wrong for Arizona State there in the early going? You got to give credit to Texas. It was not pretty there in the fourth quarter whatsoever, but Quinn Ewers, this passing attack, the protection got a little bit better as the game went along, and they had some really opportunistic play calls down the stretch that led to their victory. I thought Quinn Ewers played a very average game for 3 quarters, and then in the fourth quarter at times, really the last 5 minutes and overtime, he played outstanding football. Clutch, accurate, decisive, putting it in. He gave his kicker not once, but twice, gave him an opportunity to make it and win the game potentially in regulation. Then in overtime, critical 4th and 13, hits it on a perfect double move on a post over the top against blitz coverage. They fixed the protection. It's blocked up. He has time to release it, and it's a touchdown. But he played tremendous down the stretch and deserves a lot of credit, because it's not about where you start in a game. It's about where you finish. And while he did not do a great job in the first 55 minutes of the game at times, how he played in the last 5 and in extras, he was tremendous. You got to give credit to that. Also amazing to watch Matthew Golden and how he has just elevated his play, and the connection that's been created between him and Quinn Ewers on some of the deep balls is something that's going to continue to probably get a little bit better, because this is a performance from Quinn Ewers. This is a performance that I think can be built upon. You know, I think things have been a little shaky at times for him since he returned from the ankle. It feels like he hasn't really had all of his best stuff. It really hasn't. But man, when you finish like that, that's a performance that can have you just filled with confidence, feeling great about where you're going to go with the football, with the game on the line. He made some really tight window throws, not just over the middle, but out to the sideline as well. I think this is a performance that can be built on if you're Texas in the passing attack. And then the rushing game, I think the running game's still there. Can there be more in it? Sure. I do think the challenges that they've now had along the offensive line with guys banged up and having some guys in and out of the lineup, that's going to be a problem. They've been a little more inconsistent up front as well. So I think they got to get healthy at some point. And guess what? There's not a real long layoff between now and when they play next, just 9 days between this performance and when they'll tee it up in the Cotton Bowl against the Ohio State Buckeyes. But they need to get healthy because that offensive line, man, they need to be better against a defense like they'll see here in scarlet and gray in about 9 or 10 days or so. The other thing I would say about this Texas team, I think Texas needs to find that next gear if it's possible. Because there's times when I watch this team, they get out to a really hot start and they kind of go to sleep and they kind of get monotonous and just kind of, they lose complete rhythm and they try to finish with the flurry and they almost win it. But it's like, man, what the heck? Why can't I get 60 minutes from this Texas team? Where is that performance? We've seen this multiple times now. They jump on a team early, it's 14-0 before you blink. And then, sure enough, they don't do anything for 3.5 quarters, and then it's a dogfight in the final 5 minutes. Where is this team going to find that killer instinct that, hey, I got a team on the ropes right now. I got a team on the ropes. I need to keep going. I need to keep being aggressive. I need to keep pushing it downfield. I need to keep making sure I'm balancing run and pass. I need to keep blitzing on the defensive side. I need to keep playing more man coverage. These are the things that I want to see Texas do more of because there's just something missing. They almost get a lead, exhale, and then it's hard to kind of work themselves back into a rhythm. So that's not going to work, by the way. Against a team like Ohio State with that kind of firepower, that's how you finish a team, by the way. Ohio State, yes, there was a moment there in the third quarter, early fourth quarter, where it's like, okay, Oregon maybe has a little momentum here. And then, boom, Ohio State put an end to it. That's how you finish. I think Texas needs to learn that in the next 9 days, or else they're going to be in a tough spot going forward, knowing the level of competition will only increase from this point forward. The other takeaway that you have to have from this game is that Cam Skattebo has everyone's respect now, right? It was one thing for you to watch his performance against Iowa State and think, yeah, you know what? He's a good player, right? He's excellent. He's an elite player. He's a top 5 player in the Heisman Trophy voting. He had everyone's respect, I think, after that game. But when you do what he did against a defense that's this talented, that kind of elevates your level of respect significantly, doesn't it? Because this is a really talented team that has bigger dudes than him, that has more talented dudes than the team that he's playing with in some spots, that has pros kind of all over the defensive front and secondary, and yet he was completely up to the task. Do you want to think about just how ridiculous this performance was from Cam Skattebo? He led Arizona State in rushes. He led them in rushing yards. He led them in rushing touchdowns. That should not come as a huge surprise. Cam Skattebo does that all the time. He's a featured workhorse back. But here's where it starts to get really interesting. Ready? He also led them in receptions. He led them in receiving yards. And he also led them in passing touchdowns in the game on Wednesday afternoon. That's right. You heard that right. Led them in rushing yards, led them in rushing touchdowns, receptions, receiving yards, and passing touchdowns. The guy plays running back, but he can do anything for this Arizona State team. He became the first FBS player with 100 rushing yards, 50 receiving yards, a passing touchdown, 2 rushing touchdowns in a game in the last 25 years. It's never been done. And he did it against the best defense he's seen in his career on the biggest stage he's played in on his career as well. Unbelievable performance from him. And I also, too, am appreciative of the performance we got from Arizona State. They deserve immense credit for the fight. Look, they backed it up, man. There is not a single person in the country that's sitting there saying, yeah, Arizona State didn't belong. They absolutely belonged. They proved it, and they should walk away with their heads held high because that was a tremendous performance in difficult circumstances against a really good football team. Another thing that we need to talk about in this game, kicking woes. Bert Auburn missed 2 go-ahead field goals in the fourth quarter. All right. Kickers are 0 for 4 on go-ahead field goals in the fourth quarter of a college football playoff game, which feels like a kind of a strange stat, doesn't it? So there's only been 4 field goal attempts on go-ahead field goals in the fourth quarter of a college football playoff game. Remember, this is since 2014, right? There's only been 4? Yeah, that's the stat. Kickers are 0 and 4 in go-ahead field goal situations, walk-off situations in a college football playoff game. So crazy and wild that it hit the upright there on the left side and it went to overtime. But either way, Texas survives. Gotta find that next level of urgency when they have a team that is down, at least down a couple scores early in that ball game. And then the performance of the week so far. At least we still have 1 game to go tomorrow, but the performance of the week so far, Ohio State Buckeyes, man, they make mincemeat of the Oregon Ducks. This was a clinic. I can't say it was crazy surprising. I look at Ohio State and how they've adjusted their trajectory. Man alive, it is a fun thing to watch this Buckeye team play when they're playing like this, isn't it? I mean, right from the get-go, using a tendency breaker right out of the gate, one of their most reliable plays, just a little quick screen. Nope, boom, throw it right in behind it. I mean, this is a thoughtful game plan from start to finish, and you see the confidence now that Will Howard's starting to play with, and this team has gone to a different level. You see them relying so heavily on their wide receivers. It's like, man, the Michigan game, we let it get away from us. We didn't give our wide receivers enough looks. We didn't play aggressively enough. Well, you look at the last 2 games against Tennessee and against Oregon, it's like, wow, like they could not come out of the gate with more aggressiveness than they have come out of the gate with in the last couple weeks. It's been so awesome to watch, man. And Will Howard, some of the throws, like he makes it look pretty easy. Even the misses aren't that bad, right? Some of the throws that he's executing, all 4 passes thrown 20 yards downfield in this game he completed. At one point, like it was 146 yards, 4 for 4, 2 touchdowns. A couple deep touchdown throws like I referenced. He now has thrown 4 touchdown passes on throws 20 yards downfield in the last 2 games. That is the same amount that he threw for in the first 12 games of the regular season. The last 2 games, he was 7 for 8 on throws that travel 20 or more yards downfield, with a 4-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. So the only time it was thrown deep was intercepted, but it's beside the point. Before that, he was 16 of 30, and he had 4-to-1 touchdown interception ratio in the first 12 games. So think about how accurate he is when you can take chunk yardage and pull off throws like he's pulling off right now. What do you want to do? You want to give Emeka Egbuka and Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate those underneath throws, let them break a tackle and go? Or do you want to get up in their face, challenge them at the line of scrimmage, and force them to complete a low percentage throw on a downfield shot? Well, you want to probably get up in their face and force them to throw it over your head, and because most quarterbacks in college aren't going to make that throw very consistently. Well, Will Howard is. I just told you in the last 2 games, he's completing 88% of his throws that are traveling 20 yards downfield. Think about how ridiculous that is. And what can you possibly do? Think about some of the times. I mean, it's not like guys were running like wide open all the time, okay? Yes, there was one throw to Jeremiah Smith at the right corner, going left to right, that was pretty open, but it was off play action. It was not that, it was not that coverable of a play when you look at how it all lined up, and he went on the big post across the middle. It was really, really impressive. But as crazy as it sounds, for as impressed as I am with Ohio State's offense, and it's so impressive. I mean, the way they have things going on both sides of the ball right now, running it, throwing it, deep ball, short, catch and run situations, avoiding crazy long yardage situations, being opportunistic with the run game, perimeter run game, inside run game. Like, they have it all going right now on offense for sure. But the more impressive part of this game might have been the defense. And I know that sounds crazy to think about. They just scored 41 on one of the best teams in the country, and they just beat them by 20-plus points. And they did give up 21 points, and I get that. But most of those plays were kind of in garbage time, and let's be real, it never really felt super competitive because the second it felt like Oregon was going to get things going, boom, the defense would make a play, sack Dillon Gabriel again, and basically destroy any hopes of putting a drive together by getting him behind the sticks. But in the first game, do you realize that Oregon allowed 2 pressures and 0 sacks against Ohio State? 2 pressures, 0 sacks in the first game. Well, let's see how it went here, shall we? 9 sacks. 9 sacks. Pretty ridiculous. Take that back. 8 sacks. 9 sacks is the record. 8 sacks. They almost had an 8 sack, but they determined that he was not sacked on the play. I counted it as 9, but either way, 8 sacks in the game. Ridiculous. He also was pressured on 22 of his 52 dropbacks. That's the 3rd highest pressure rate that Dillon Gabriel has ever faced. On the season, he was facing pressure on about 26 or 27% of his dropbacks. They nearly doubled that. When you think about just how aggressive this group was, Dillon Gabriel had not been pressured more than 17 times this season. The pressured 22 times against this Ohio State team was off the charts good. Most sacks Dillon Gabriel's taken in his career, and it was just a relentless pursuit of the passer all game long. You don't think those defensive ends heard the noise? Heard the noise about how they weren't really impactful at all in that first game. They didn't really have much of an impact on the game whatsoever. And maybe they need to play a little more consistently and play with a little bit more viability along the front, because we did not get that very often at times throughout the season. Well, they heard and they answered with their performance in this matchup today. Tremendous performance defensively from Ohio State. There was very little room, and you got to have a lot of respect for the way they played. All right, Notre Dame, they knock it down, the 2-time champion Georgia Bulldogs in the last 3 years, and they did it by using Georgia's recipe against them. What a performance from Notre Dame in all 3 phases. Now, you're going to look at the numbers offensively. You're going to think, well, 240 yards or so. Is that really that impressive? Yes, because what ultimately determined the outcome of this game was the pivotal mistake. And those mistakes were made by Georgia. A couple of fumbles in the game, a couple of turnovers in the game, one in the red zone, one that was in their own red zone, which Notre Dame quickly turned in to 7 points. But what was most remarkable about this performance from the Irish was the fact that they lost a dominant and disruptive defensive lineman in Riley Mills. He was incredible all season long and was maybe the best player on the field against Indiana a couple weeks ago. Well, he gets hurt late in that game, and they lose him for the rest of the run, and they didn't have any drop-off whatsoever along their own defensive line. You had guys like Donovan Heinisch step up. You had Tuli Alamaka step up. You had Gabriel Rubio step up, Howard Cross step up, and then the linebackers as well. The way they contributed to the pass rush was really impressive. Also, they really flustered this offensive line and kept constant pressure on Gunnar Stockton from start to finish. The other thing that was really amazing in this game was the special teams play. 2 significant moments created by Notre Dame's special teams unit. The kickoff return to start the second half was enormous. Jane Harrison was targeted in the transfer portal to be a deep threat as a wide receiver. It didn't work as much as they wanted it to work, but he's still a very effective and dangerous kick return guy. He takes one the distance to kick off the second half in style. And then later in the game, to have Marcus Freeman the wherewithal on a 4th and 1 inside their own 20-yard line to send the punt team out there and then do an immediate full 11-man substitution, forcing Georgia to go and make their own substitution. But the chaos that was created by the Georgia defense as they were running back onto the field, they forgot to think about the snap count, which led to Jalen Walker jumping into the neutral zone and awarding Notre Dame a free first down. That was incredible gamesmanship by Marcus Freeman, stealing a possession, and then 9 plays and 6 minutes later, they finally give the ball back to Georgia. But at that point, with a 13-point lead, there was almost no chance whatsoever that Georgia would be able to mount a comeback. The other thing I was impressed with was Riley Leonard. And while you look at Riley Leonard's performance, you look at the numbers, just 90 yards passing, but you have to look at the rush yardage as well, and how many times was he able to spring a decent run, probably 1, maybe 2 times, but that was all he needed. A critical 3rd and 7 around the left-hand side where he leaped over the All-American Malachi Starks for a first down, pivotal play to continue to take time off the clock late in the game. And then a big run earlier in the game up through the middle that kind of jump-started their offense's performance. So while Riley Leonard's numbers won't blow you away, the smart situational plays that he made were also very impressive. One thing to note, Jeremiah Love just 6 carries in the ball game. He was favoring that right knee. He had to put a knee brace back on it. Will that have an impact when they ultimately tee it up a week from now against the Penn State Nittany Lions? So that's something we'll be monitoring very closely. But this should be a tremendous performance. It should be a tremendous matchup between Penn State and Notre Dame, 2 teams that have been really, really solid down the stretch and have been hot as can be in the last few weeks of the season. So I'm really looking forward to being on the call a week from tonight when that game gets underway. It should be amazing. That'll do it for us here at Always College Football. Really appreciate you guys. Please like, rate, and subscribe to the show wherever you get the show. We always appreciate the support that you've shown us through the years, and we look forward to continuing to providing you with awesome breakdowns, not just leading into the games, but also recapping the games when they wrap up here next week in the semifinal matchup. So for all of us here at Always College Football, for Mark, Jake, Jack, the other Jack, I'm Greg. We hope you have an amazing day, and remember, it's always college football. Hey guys, it's Greg McElroy. Thanks for watching Always College Football. Make sure you like, rate, and subscribe to ESPN's YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your podcasts.